All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and start this. This is about the Senator Hwy mine. We're going to get a little bit more information, a little bit more insight. Thank you guys for joining. And yeah, let's see what happens, guys. So I'm going to try to stay silent. If you have any questions, put it in the comments. We'll try to get it out there to the rest of the community. Test. 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 All right, guys. I hope you can hear me. I got a new video cam, so hopefully you guys can hear me out there. I just took a little did a little test. This is in regards to the mine that is up in Senator Highway. It's expected to take out 800 acres of land and be utilized. We are told that it is a Chinese mine that is mining material that is potentially just gold. It was on our radar probably about maybe 2, 3 months ago. And we obviously sounded the alarm, started talking to all of our officials and asking what was happening. And so this is going to be the outcome. They're supposed to be starting at 5:30. Obviously, they're running late. But if you guys will just hang out and wait for it, I'm sure we're going to get a lot of answers in regards to what is really going on with this mine and how our officials kind of like just allowed it to go. Some of the concerns that I think a lot of citizens in that area have is based off of this just how massive it is, and anything that gets mined, it's potentially it hurts and damages a lot, and there's pretty big a lot of water resources up in that area, and it's just concern. It's a concern that everybody should have, and that's the reason why this is becoming a bigger thing. So let's see. Can't hear anything quite yet. Hasn't started. And is this instead of the mastermind? I don't quite know what you're talking about, but if you're talking about our masterminds, it happens the first Tuesday and the third Tuesday of every month. So, anyways, guys, this is going to go down. Once again, they're supposed to be started at 5:30, but they're running a little bit late. If you have any questions, put them into the comments right below you. This is being shared on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different platforms. So if you message and you want to leave your name, go ahead and do it. If not, it just comes back to on our end as Facebook users. So with that being said, we're just going to go ahead and wait. Thank you for joining the Prescott Times media, and we definitely are very concerned about these types of things in our neighborhood. And this is very, very close to Prescott, Arizona, downtown Prescott, Arizona. It's also, if I'm not not too far off as far as like the location, it's like sitting right above the Lynx Lake area and also next to the Hacienda. So it's literally in that vicinity, in that area. So if you guys are concerned, this would be a good time to go ahead and actually voice that concern, because either we do or we don't. I mean, it's just a matter of time when people just start taking advantage of these areas. So much of our country is owned by other countries, the equivalent of the size of Pennsylvania. True that. There's a lot of land out there by foreign companies and agencies. So this is concerning. It is what it is. Just a little bit of side talk. Did you guys hear about the water that was or the alfalfa farms that was being farmed out there in Phoenix? Out there in Phoenix, they were just farming alfalfa, and they were taking the products and just sending it right back to I forgot where it was, but it was not even being farmed for this area, this country. It was just getting sent back to a different country, and they're just using water like it was free. And basically it was free to them. So that ended up getting stopped. I think that's where it's at right now. Currently, they did just cut it all out. So this is another thing that what we have heard or what we have talked about is that the Chinese are taking this gold and just basically putting it on barges and shipping it back to China. So it's not even being used for this community or country in general. So it's right here in our backyard. So that's the reason why it's a big concern. So stay tuned. If you have any questions, just go ahead and put it into the comment list, and then we'll go ahead and get this community meeting up and running. So be patient. It was supposed to start at 5:30. We are now at 5:38. So I don't know. I'm not the one running the meeting. So I was on time. They're not on time. So be patient, guys. If you have, oh, there we go. Saudi Arabia. Thank you, Katie. Thanks, Katie. Appreciate it. Yes. I don't say it. If I don't remember it or don't know it, I just say, oh, someplace. So thank you. I really do appreciate it. But that is very correct. So, guys, I'm just going to go ahead and put this on, big screen. So if you guys want to go ahead and come back or just chill or whatever it may be. I don't know how long this meeting is going to be either. So be patient. I might just chime in every minute or every once in a while to kind of have a little dialogue on the side. So, yeah, let's just go ahead and see what happens. So thank you guys for joining us. Stay tuned.
Welcome, everybody. If you could please take your seats. We have this venue for 2 hours, and I want to make sure that we get all of our questions answered and leave here with good, solid information for the community. We're here for the community tonight, and I want all of you to know that. Welcome, and I'm Mary Mallory. I am the County Supervisor for District 5. I really want to thank all of you for coming tonight. I want to thank the college for being a partner with the community and bringing this venue here for us. I would like to have all of our elected officials stand at this time. I would like for you to see all your representation who has come here tonight to be a part of what it is that we are dealing with. And I also would like to recognize the mine inspector, Paul Marsh. Thank you, sir. Our elected mine inspector. As we move forward tonight, I just want to say that we are blessed in this country to be able to gather like this, to be free, to have a voice, and be safe when we do this. So, our military fights as we stand here today in foreign lands, and our first responders fight every day in all of our communities. So let us be the family that we are as we stand here tonight and come together. We have all of our state agencies here to help and give us the information that we need. I appreciate all of them for coming. I appreciate what we are in Yavapai County. We are a family and we care about our community. So thank you very much. And with that being said, I would like to have Chairman Brown come out, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ladies and gentlemen, join me in a salute to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
I will now turn this meeting over to our County Manager, Maury Thompson.
Good evening. Before I begin tonight, I want to take a moment to recognize Supervisor Mallory for bringing us all together tonight to hear from our experts and have our questions answered. Mary? So as Mary indicated, my name is Maury Thompson. I am the County Manager for Yavapai County. Again, my thanks to Supervisor Mallory for organizing this, and my thanks to this panel of folks who are willing to come tonight to tell us what they know about the issue and give us an opportunity to ask our questions. Before we begin, I'm going to make some brief introductions, and when I call your name, if you would tip to the crowd so they know who you are, that would be appreciated. From the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, or ADEQ, we have Lee Padgett. Natalie Mullenberg. Then as previously recognized, our Arizona State Mine Inspector, Paul Marsh. From the Prescott National Forest, Sarah Clausen. And from the Bureau of Land Management, Leon Thomas, District Manager. And finally, from our own Yavapai County Public Works, we have Roger McCormick, our Assistant Director, and Joe Uott, our Operations Manager. Thank you all. And again, without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to ADEQ, and I believe they're going to lead off the information and presentation this evening. Lee?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, hosts, presenters, and the audience for being here tonight. We know you have other things to do, but we're glad to have you. I'm Lee Padgett. I am the Inspections and Compliance Unit Manager for Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. I have 8 inspectors that go around the state, and they respond to complaints. They do inspections of permitted facilities, and they enforce the Clean Water Act. This is our mission and vision. Arizona Department of Environmental Quality is composed of 3 essential environmental protection divisions. Those are the air, water, and drinking water and surface water. Within water, we have approximately 4 different sections. We have a groundwater section, we have a drinking water section, and then Natalie and I are here today from the surface water protection. She's with Watershed Improvement Unit. She will be going after I complete my slides. We'd like you to wait until after she's done with hers to ask questions, if that's okay. I appreciate your patience with that. Now, some of you may be here to learn a little bit more about a mine or get some additional information about Gold Paradise Peak. So without further ado, I will talk to you a little bit about that. According to the Yavapai County's assessor's map, there are approximately 267 acres of owned land by Gold Paradise Peak and its affiliate Sinovantage. On the top parcel, you'll see that it's a small yellow box. That is the Senator Adit and tailings pile. That is the end of an historic tunnel that was possibly used in the past to observe the geology or act as ventilation or even just drainage from a very long tunnel that's underground with multiple inputs to it. Those are called shafts, right? So we think about the activity that's happening up on the ground surface. There's shafts to access that, and then we have to do something with that water. So this particular adit has been there for decades and has been draining water passively into the Hassayampa River. That is about 12 acres of that parcel owned by Sinovantage. The larger yellow portion is about 221 acres. That is affiliated with the Sundance extraction site, and that is where they are proposing to mine ore. And it does span quite a bit of that upper level of the mountain. The current disturbed area, which you will see in a moment, is almost on top of that tunnel. We don't know for sure exactly where the positioning of that disturbance is in relation to the tunnel that's underground and that serves that adit. And it does cross the Senator Highway in some areas. You can see that with that yellow line. It does also go kind of up into the north, well, I guess the top right of that map toward Hassayampa Lake. And then that bottom left spot is the parcel that we know as Azurite processing area. It's showing as about 34 acres, 33.81. And that is where they plan to haul the ore from Sundance and take it to Azurite and process it. Go to the next slide here. Top left photo is from Senator Highway looking at the historic adit. There's an opening in the mountain. That's where the water had been coming out. In the front of that picture, just below and to the right, you'll see some yellow material. That is what we call mine tailings. So not only is there evidence of material being pushed out of the tunnel, but it remains on that hillside. And from the Senator Highway, you're looking across the Hassayampa River at that adit opening in that top left photo. I wish I had a pointer, but I'm going to show you. It looks kind of on the aerial photo, which is the Google Earth screenshot. You can kind of see a series of yellow spots, and it looks like a roadway that goes down in there. Those of you who are from this area, you've seen those 5 passive wetland cells is what we call those. I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then on the other side, you see a very large disturbed area with a little bit of blue in there. The bottom left photo is from the access road to Sundance. And we're looking at the ore pile that was found when we started our investigations. They covered it with tarp to ensure that it wasn't going to get rained on and cause some leaching of that material, and it would have somewhat of a containment. There's also some temporary erosion and sediment controls around that. It's called silt fencing, and what it does is it keeps the sediment kind of closer to the pile. If you can see very close up, there's a semi-truck in front of that blue pile. So it's a very large pile of ore that is sitting there to be processed. This is what we call Azurite processing area. The picture on the top left, we're looking from a road that accesses that property, and we're looking south toward Phoenix. In the middle of the picture, you might be able to discern a tiny little blue spot. That's actually a wash pond. They are recirculating water from there. They're getting it out of Slate Creek. So Slate Creek is the impacted drainage in this photo. They had to circulate, they had to redistribute the channel of the Slate Creek underneath their processing area. And at the very far end of the photo, like you're looking out toward the mountains, you can see the disturbed area. In the Google screenshot, that bottom left part of the site, that is where they're proposing to take their tailings. They have a permit for that, and it is a tailing storage facility. That's where the material that they are not going to sell would go in perpetuity. This is about 34 acres. Okay. Okay, our involvement started pretty much in 2018. There was some watershed work that was being conducted by Natalie's team, and they were assessing the Hassayampa River and some of the tributaries that go to it, and they started noticing those samples have copper, cadmium, and zinc in them. And so they referred it to the compliance unit. The permits and compliance unit did some research, found out that there was some activity up there. They went and did some inspections. Shortly after that, we mobilized a groundwater team. They also did some inspections. And we ended up having multiple notices of violation for impacts to the environment. Again, these are environmental permits that ADEQ manages. And the other folks here will be talking a little bit more about the land use process. But these are environmental permits. They have 6 permits for those 3 areas. Those are all water related, and then they also have an air registration. But that was a result of multiple inspections, multiple findings. What we were seeing was the temporary erosion and sediment controls weren't being maintained. There were discharges of concrete slurry into Slate Creek because they were building infrastructure so they could process that ore. And they also had a really poor history with responding to us in a timely fashion. So in 2020, we filed a complaint, and the court said, you need to stop. It was a preliminary injunction that told them no more mining and no more expansion until you're in compliance with environmental law. It took another 8 to 10 months to get consent judgments. We have 2 of those. One of those is just for Gold Paradise Peak, and the other one is Gold Paradise Peak and Sino-Vantage. And they are basically saying that you need to get all your permits in order, you need to be in compliance with environmental law, and then they also stipulated certain steps they needed to do next. And they were required to build a treatment system of their choice to make sure that the water coming out of the adit was going to meet what we call standards. And so water quality has standards based on designated uses. And so we are trying to achieve that level of treatment so that they could be releasing that into the Hassayampa River without impacting it. In December 2021, we noted that they weren't going to be able to get any other type of permit other than an individual permit. Prior to that time, that adit flow was not permitted, and it was just free flowing into the Hassayampa River. The benefit of giving them a permit to discharge, they were required to do sampling and send us the information. So we have at least 16 months of data that tells us what was coming out of the adit, what the concentrations of those metals are, and we were able to also get some ambient stream sampling on their dime, upstream and downstream of the mine, so we could compare it, right? We want to see how it's coming in before it hits the tailings pile or this discharge point, and then how it looks when it leaves, and that's downstream of that tailings pile. Now, more of the history. I think I might have already covered most of this, but again, we saw multiple surface water impacts. That injunction that we got, they were not allowed to do any mining. So when we do our routine inspections in there, when we do our complaint inspections in there, because we get a lot of information from this community, which is great. You're our eyes and ears. We live in Phoenix. We have people that go around all over the state. So it's helpful to get those complaints and get that new information. So I want to thank you for being active in the community. So as a result of those, we're not seeing a lot because they're not actively mining. They're actively clearing dirt, but they're not able to extract ore and they're not able to process it. I suspect if they get to that stage, we could see additional impacts, we could see additional violations, but currently we're not seeing a lot when we go out there. So just cleared soil, temporary sediment controls, those kinds of things. We did observe a discrepancy around the tailing storage facility, which was at the azurite processing area on that south end. And it was the points of the facility were not matching up with what we expected. So keep in mind, the injunction is temporary and the prohibition on mining activity from an environmental pollution perspective would lift when the injunction is cleared by the court, when they're actually in compliance with their permits and their compliance conditions in those judgments. The consent judgment said you need to collect and treat the adit water. They hired a consultant and they decided what they would do is build this treatment cell that had wetland plants in it with the idea that the wetland plants will take up those heavy metals, convert them, detain some of that sediment, and improve or polish the water. They were also supposed to address the tailings pile. It wasn't specific, it just said address the tailings pile. They were also required to sample, right? So until the wetlands were completed, they were supposed to sample within the drainage in the Hassayampa River, upstream, downstream. The points were specified in their individual permit. And then once the wetland treatment cells were operational, they were required to sample that to see how it's coming into the wetland and how it's leaving the wetland. And I don't mean by the flow, but what is the quantity of pollutant in that incoming water and what is the reduction in pollutant leaving those wetland cells. To date, the wetland cells have not been completed. They failed to install the plants that are necessary to make that effective. And just before Christmas, they plugged the adit. So there's not any water coming out of that adit any longer. And so now the Attorney General's office is actively enforcing that consent judgment, both of them, both judgments in Superior Court. And we went to the courts in August and requested a civil penalty, which was prescribed in that consent judgment. They said that if you don't do X, Y, Z by such and such time, you're liable for deferred penalties. So we took that action for $600,000. And then after they plugged the adit, they continued to move dirt around in front of the adit. And we weren't sure why. And it was causing nuisance. It was creating sediment discharges into the Hassayampa. And so we went back to court and asked them for another injunction or a stop work. So the court ordered them to remove all of their heavy equipment from that site and take pictures of the facility, take pictures at specified points. The ADQ inspectors went out with Natalie's team and put posts in the ground so we can actually observe the things we need to see how the property is behaving. And that was completed, I think, last month. And it allows us the ability to do some research and understand how that property is behaving and what could be potential remedies. Plugging the adit could have consequences for some of those other inlets, and we don't know the extent of those. So we have a consultant that's investigating that, and we were able to get the court to defer the hearing until the 1st of June. So that is pretty much where we are today. In closing, I again want to thank you for your patience while you get to hear about some really awesome work Natalie has done. And she's on the non-regulatory side. So our unit manages responsible parties or permittees. Some of them are not responsible, so we manage permittees, right? And what we do is different than what her team does. And her team is non-regulatory abandoned mine reclamation, and they've been doing a lot of great work in that same watershed. So if I could turn this over to Natalie, that would be great. Natalie?
See. Hello, everyone. My name is Natalie. So I work at ADEQ. I lead a team of hydrogeologists, and what our team does is clean up abandoned mines that are discharging into water bodies or streams and lakes. And this is all done voluntarily. As Lee said, we don't have any, regulatory authority or enforcement authority. And so our team is really working hard with private landowners and public land managers to clean up these abandoned mines. And so we thought you guys may be interested in hearing more about this type of work as well. And so what we focus on is working under the Clean Water Act. We want to reduce the contamination in the rivers and the streams so that we can all recreate safely and we can all enjoy a clean environment. And so we're kind of working in this nexus under the Clean Water Act, trying to reduce contamination so that there are little to no exceedances of surface water quality standards in our rivers and streams. And so our team has been focusing on the Hassayampa River because it's what's known as impaired. It's not meeting standards for cadmium, zinc, and copper, mostly due to the discharges from the abandoned mines. And when I say abandoned mine, I'm talking about the ones that, were started in the late 1800s, people coming out here trying to strike it rich, and that predated any modern environmental regulation. And so these mines have been historically discharging. And while some of them may be situated on private land, those private landowners did not actually cause or create that mine. And so that's why we call them abandoned. And so we come in mostly with funding from the Environmental Protection Agency to clean them up to help protect public health and the environment. And so overall, our process can be summarized. Basically, we identify a water body like the Hassayampa River. We do stream water quality sampling. We may do soil sampling too up at the abandoned mines to try to figure out where the contamination is, what's causing it, what is it contaminated with, how is it impacting the stream. And that data is all very critical because then we work with consultants who will then design a remediation strategy or different techniques or methods that are used to prevent the river from getting contaminated from that abandoned mine. An abandoned mine can have many different types of features. They're all kind of special snowflakes. You might have shafts, you might have horizontal adits that are discharging, waste rock piles, tailings. You'll have a combination of all of it. And so each one is pretty unique and it takes a lot of expertise to try to figure out how to prevent the contamination. So once we design the remediation, we'll then go ahead and implement it with our consultants. And then after it's implemented, we'll actually go back and we want to verify how well that remediation is working. Did we reduce the contamination enough? Is there more work that we need to do? And that is all done through the stream quality sampling. We'll verify it with soil samples as well. And then we'll try to measure how much pollution has been reduced. We also regularly do evaluations of the site, mostly at a quarterly basis, to, again, check how well the remediation is holding up, and see if there's any more further work that we need to do. So here on the map, we are working in the Hassayampa River. This is one of our priority watersheds. Again, mostly because of how close it is to you guys. We want to make sure that this river is clean for you to enjoy. And you can see there's also several tributaries we're working in as well. So far since 2020, our team has cleaned up 4 abandoned mine sites that you all are probably familiar with. McKinley Mill, there's McClure Mill, Cache Mine, and Storm Cloud. And they're all kind of in the vicinity of the Senator mine site. And so we've partnered with Forest Service at times or private landowners to clean up our these mines. And even our projects need to go through a permitting process. If we're going to do any work in the stream channel, any modifications, we'll need to go to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to get a permit. And we often do a biological evaluation to see if there's any endangered species nearby. We often joke not messing with the Mexican spotted owls in their breeding season, so we don't do our remediation work during that time. And then we also do cultural resource surveys too to make sure that we don't disturb anything that's culturally significant. And so there's a lot that goes into these projects. It can take a little bit over a year to clean up one of these abandoned mine sites. Here's some recent pictures that you can see of McKinley Mill, Storm Cloud, McClure, and Cache. And we really couldn't do this work without the partnership we have with the community here and with the private landowners. We literally couldn't be able to access these abandoned mines to clean them up without the partnership in the community here, as well as the public land managers and our consultants and the great team of experts that we have on our team. And so I'm here if you guys have any questions about this work. I'm also always interested to hear if you guys know of any abandoned mine features that you're concerned about, that you want to work with us on, so that we can all kind of leave it better than we found it. So thank you.
Thank you, Lee and Natalie. Just so you know, this was probably the longest and the only real presentation tonight. Our other speakers have brief comments that they would like to share, but just so you know, a little preparing ahead. Then we will go to the question and answer period once we hear from all of the speakers. So next up is our Arizona State Mine Inspector, Paul Marsh. Paul.
Thank you, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for allowing me to speak tonight. So Gold Paradise Peak, just want to talk a little bit about the history. It's been in operation for about 8 years. It's changed ownerships through that 8 years. It's essentially two parcels like they talked about. It's the top of the hill where they're mining, then you go over to the back side of the hill where they're going to process. In the last 3 years, there have been three violations written to them under the health and safety standards. So the mine inspector's office, our primary duty is the health and safety of miners on a mine site. We have 4 primary duties. We're regulators first and foremost. We train miners. We do post-mining reclamation on private land, which I'll get to in a moment. And we do abandoned mine closures. And to Natalie and the great work she's doing, I want to put into perspective here. Yavapai County is the leading gold producing county in the state. This area right here we're talking about at one time probably had about 100 mines in operation. The state currently has an estimated 100,000 abandoned mines. So it is no small process what Natalie's doing, what my team's doing. With very small team, my office is currently at 16 employees, including myself. So I just want to talk about the inspection. So to the mine inspector's office, they're not mining yet. They're still in exploration. Yes, they're stripping land and they're creating their mill site, but they're not mining rock. They're not running rock through their mill site. And in fact, up until when the road was widened late last year, we looked at it as we didn't think it was ever going to go into operation. Again, this has been 8 years in the making. So in, let me go, I don't want to go backwards to forwards. In 2022, they were written, 3 violations were written to the Gold Paradise Peak. One for not turning in quarterly reports. They're required to report to the mine inspector's office how many hours the miners are working. They were cited for not having life jackets near a pond they had, and they were also cited for 2 electrical side grinders that had lock-on switches. That's required under the state statutes. In 2023, they were written 1 violation for a shovel that had a broken handle, so it was not safe for use. In 2024, we have not inspected yet. We're required to inspect each mine once a year. I want to point out something else. In 2022, they had an average of 6 employees on site. For the entire year 2023, they had 6 employees on site. And so far for 2024, they're down to 3 employees. So they're not doing as much work now, and I have a feeling that has a little bit to do with what ADEQ is doing. So let's talk about the reclamation. Reclamation is required once you disturb more than 5 acres on private land. There's been a lot of communications back and forth, and much like ADEQ, they are slow to answer letters to them. Just recently, we finally got a letter back from them at the beginning of April stating that they had just broken their 5-acre threshold, which requires them to have a reclamation plan. So the Attorney General's office, because they are slow to answer questions, sent them a letter, would have went out early last week, requiring them to have a reclamation plan to the State Mine Inspector's office within the next 90 days. If they do not turn a reclamation plan in the next 90 days, we'll go back to the Attorney General's office and will require a cease and desist letter until they do. So they just broke that 5-acre threshold, changes a whole lot of different parameters on what they have to do. And so I know there's going to be a lot of questions that come up. We're happy to answer those questions. I know that's what we're all here for. So thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Next up is our Prescott National Forest and Sarah Clausen.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Sarah Clausen. I'm the Forest Supervisor for the Prescott National Forest. Our office has been getting a lot of calls and questions about our jurisdiction over the current mining activities. And so I hope tonight to just provide a few comments to help clarify our current and any potential future role we would have. And then, of course, I'll be available for answering any questions after. So the first thing that I wanted to share is that a simplified rule of thumb for jurisdiction in regards to mining rights on public land is that the BLM has jurisdiction over everything underground, and then the Forest Service has jurisdiction over all that's on the surface and above ground when we're talking about National Forest Service system lands. So at this time, the Prescott National Forest has not received any proposals for exploration in this area. Claim validation is the purview of the state of Arizona and the Bureau of Land Management. And those agencies would determine someone's legal right to mine those valid existing claims. So our role would begin if we were to receive a proposal to actually explore or develop any of the currently unpatented claims, unvalidated, unpatented claims. So for any mining or exploration proposal that we received, we would conduct a thorough administrative review, which, depending on the nature of the claim, the location, the operating plan they would be required to submit, it would typically include an analysis of any potential impacts to the environment and to the public. And in accordance with the National Environmental Policy Act, we would undergo that analysis. Through that analysis, we would identify mitigation measures that would be developed to address any adverse effects. And it would include multiple opportunities throughout the process for the public to engage and provide any input. So again, at this time, the Prescott National Forest has not received any proposals for exploration or mining activity in the area in question. I do want to acknowledge that we are working to verify the potential for any encroachment of the mining activities that are currently happening on private land. So we're learning whether or not that activities have spilled onto National Forest System land. So many of you that are local here, this just for some context, understand that the Prescott National Forest has been planning for forest thinning projects in that area. So for the purpose of improved forest health and hazardous fuels reduction, so reducing the risk of catastrophic wildfire to the environment and to communities. Because of that project planning that we've been doing, we have actually already contracted landline survey. It's really critical that before we remove any vegetation or take any vegetation management activities on public land that surrounds private land parcels, that we conduct those landline surveys and make sure we know where private land ends and where public land begins. So right now we have contractors that are conducting those landline surveys for us, again, connected with our hazardous fuels and forest health projects. We expect to receive the results of that landline survey soon. And that report, once accepted, would verify for us whether or not there is currently any activity that the mining company is conducting on private land that is then encroaching on public land. So we're working to validate right now through those landline surveys whether there are tailings that are spilling over onto public land, also any earthworks or road work that may be occurring on public land. If we do learn through that verification process that there is encroachment, then we would embark on a mitigation process, which would include contacting the private landowners and provide them mitigation requirements. And the final thing I'll say in my comments here, and then again, I'll be available for questions, is that we, of course, understand the need to protect the Hassayampa River and the varied communities and users that it serves. We are committed to preventing negative impacts to the health and safety of the community, to water quality and natural cultural resources while we balance our multiple use mandate. And we will continue to communicate and work with our local, county, and state officials, work with the BLM, and of course, ADEQ as needed to make sure we're following any of our laws, regulations, and policies, including mining law processes for National Forest System lands. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And next, Bureau of Land Management, we have our district manager, Leon Thomas.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. This is fantastic that we have such a great turnout. You know, really, I don't have a whole lot to say other than I'll give you jurisdictionally, my district makes up the middle third of the state of Arizona from the Utah border all the way down to the international border with Mexico. And as Sarah was saying, she's exactly right. All of the subsurface mineral estate within my district, we do have jurisdiction over. And the surface for the Forest Service lands is, you know, managed by the Forest Service, and then BLM lands, of course, managed by my office. As Sarah mentioned, there's no federal nexus right now. That's why I don't have a whole lot to say. There's been no application before her office, no application before mine, and so no federal nexus as far as the mineral estate, and so no action that needs to be taken at this time. If and when an application does come in, then we'll go ahead, we'll make sure that we ensure that the claims are valid claims, and then we'll make sure that there are valid plans of operations, and we'll make sure that the actions taken in the mining operations are done properly. And I'll be here for any questions related to the mineral estate and the actual mining on federal lands if you all have any at the end of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Leon. As I mentioned earlier, we have two members of our Public Works Department here. Just so you know, they are here in the event we have questions pertinent to their area of expertise. So with that, we are ready to turn it over to you all here this evening to hear what your questions are. We have a microphone down front, so I'd ask that you come down front and address your question there. If you know who specifically you'd like to address your question to, please do so. If not, we'll sort it out. And panel, we have two microphones. Joe, one down at your end, and Natalie, one here. You just pass those down. Okay. Sir, please.
Good evening. My name is Ronan Chiba. I was born here 40 years ago. There's several concerns regarding this, and a lot of the focus has been on the environmental impact, which obviously we're all very concerned about. But one of the things that keep coming back to is, how is it possible that a company owned by a foreign entity with known subversive intents towards our country is allowed to come and exploit our land? How do the residents of Yavapai County benefit from this?
Sir, please, I'd ask you, refrain from, we can hear you fine.
I served my country for 6 years. And the fact that this is allowed to happen is an absolute travesty. I would like an explanation how this is possible in the first place.
Thank you.
It's a great question, and thank you for your service. I'm a Marine Corps veteran myself, and I'm an Arizona native. Used to go to Lynx Lake camping before Prescott grew up, so I understand completely how you feel. Here's the problem. There is no law in Arizona to prevent a federal company from owning and processing minerals in the state of Arizona. But I do want to point something out. Currently under Senate Bill 1403, which is not all the way through yet, sponsored by Senator Shamp and LD 29, the bill will actually prevent foreign-based companies, and it's very well written, foreign-based companies that, sorry, I don't have my glasses, that the federal government considers not friends to the United States. It prohibits them from buying land and using land in Arizona. So it's not through the House yet. It's been through the Senate. It's not through the House yet. It has to go through the House, get approval. It needs bipartisan support to be signed off by the governor. And so I can't answer that. I can't speak for the governor. What I can say is it's being addressed. Is it maybe a little too late? Sure. Sadly, it is probably a little too late. It is being addressed. Your representatives are behind this 100%. Mine inspector, I will support that as well. And from there, hopefully you'll get to the governor's office and he'll sign it. I have to read through this a little more. I don't know. I don't have that answer, and I don't want to answer incorrectly to you.
Thank you.
The bill is Senate Bill 1403.
Thank you for the question, sir. Thank you, Paul. Next.
Hi, I'm Brenda Schultz, and I am the email coordinator for about close to 400 people in the community to share information. I've had a lot of people respond with questions for today, so I've tried to compile some of those in light questions, so hopefully that will help with some of the numerous people that come up. So if you'll just bear with me, a couple of them. This has to do with like a federal land question. It would appear that Gold Paradise Peak's private land is crossing over the federal land. Specifically, you talked about the spillings and the tailings into the Slate Creek. Can you talk a little bit more, or I think it was you that talked about that, is per the GIS picture that's up here, what does ADEQ do to prevent this crossover on private land but it's crossing over on federal land?
I don't believe that's my answer to tell.
Yeah, so certainly any entity, including ADEQ, if they noticed and were aware of a potential encroachment onto federal land, then we would appreciate notification, and we get that across the National Forest. And so just to reiterate, we are aware that there is potential encroachment right now on federal land. We simply can't take any type of action until we verify whether or not that is the case, and it requires those landline surveys to be completed and returned to us. We expect those to be soon. When that happens, if we do determine that there is encroachment, then we would take action. Now, I would be careful myself to say exactly what that is without knowing for sure what any of the potential encroachment might be, but typically it would likely require them to cease and desist any activities that were affecting public land, and then any sort of mitigation that was required for the existing encroachment. It would include instructions on that as well.
It'll come back here in a moment.
Woo-hoo.
There
There
we
we go. So if landowners have information or pictures of encroachment or destruction of, for example, the Senator Highway, can they submit that as part of those landline inquiries?
So I think this is probably where I'm going to end up turning over to our partners with Yavapai County, because one thing that may be helpful to explain is that there is a section, several sections of Senator Highway specifically that are actually private land that do not have federal jurisdiction, nor do they have county jurisdiction. I guess to answer the first part of your question, anytime any member of the public has information where they believe, and this is outside of just this particular issue, where you believe there's potential encroachment on National Forest System land, please do alert our offices. You can contact the Bradshaw and Chino Valley Ranger District office, which is in downtown Prescott. That's the district that covers this particular area. Again, I just want to make sure I repeat that we have already contracted landline survey for the area in question for tonight. And so any additional information that was provided to the public would be helpful, but the most important thing for us is once we're aware there's a potential, we conduct those landline surveys and then verify. Would it help for me to turn over and make sure the county can explain the Senator Highway jurisdiction? And I'll just say our offices were getting a lot of questions last summer, I think, because a lot of members of the public saw some of the vegetation removal and widening of the road on portions of the Senator Highway and assumed, understandably, that it was affecting Prescott National Forest System land. And when we were receiving that information and verifying location, that was occurring on the private section of Senator Highway that is owned by Gold Paradise Peak. Would you like me to?
That'd be fine. The second part of that question, maybe you can answer. I've
Sure.
talked to Joe about this before. So the folks that live up there, which we live up there close to this, we've seen a lot of trucking that's been going up carrying large dump trucks of dirt from BLA trucking. And we're not sure where the dirt starts, where Senator Highway goes up. That road is like golden. And I think some of the people have sent emails in to ask, who's paying for all that dirt? Who's contracting with them? And I know when I spoke to Joe, he said, it's not the county that's contracting with BLA trucking. I've been up there where 5 trucks in just one day that I saw with loads of dirt went up there. And at 7:50 when I was on my way in to town on Senator Highway, there were 2 more trucks this morning, just a little before 8, with 2 more dump trucks of dirt
Brenda?
going
Brenda?
out there.
Brenda, right? Maybe this would be a good time. Joe, you've got a map there, I believe. You want to talk about the road issue?
Yeah, so I guess to jump back maybe to your first question.
Sure.
So Roger McCormick, I'm the Assistant Public Works Director for Yavapai County. So we put this map together to hopefully help people understand where the county does and does not have right of way for this area. So Senator Highway is one of those roads within the county that has existed for a long amount of time. It has been there for decades. And there is a state statute within Arizona that allows us to maintain a road that has been historically there. That is why the county maintains Senator Highway. It's not because we have right of way for the entire length. It's because historically it's been there and we have maintained it. The cutoff, was 1990 according to the statute. So anything that was maintained prior to 1990, the county can continue to maintain. So the area that you're looking at up on the screen here that has kind of the red going through the purple Gold Paradise Peak property, that piece of Senator Highway is on private property. We do not have county right-of-way for that section. Therefore, the county maintains it historically, but we don't have authority to enforce changes or things that might occur by the property owners that own that property. We do have up to the north at the very beginning, we do have a piece of easement that was obtained as a partnership that we did with the forest to help with some fuel mitigation that they were looking to have some logging trucks come through. We did obtain some right of way for that north piece from Gold Paradise Peak. And we have that now in perpetuity where we can kind of control that section. So hopefully that kind of helps with maybe what we do and do not have ownership over.
Is Gold Paradise Peak working collaboratively with you as far as the maintenance and those trucks are big. That Center Highway, the farther you go up, it's not very wide and it's not very user-friendly.
Yeah,
Safe.
so I think Joe has worked with them directly if you want to.
Well, work is a really strong word there. So we haven't worked with them very well. The answer to the question is no. We haven't been able to work with them. This has been a little bit of a trial for us as well. We've maintained, as Roger said, the road historically for many, many, many years. And we've been able to do that historically. And if anybody wants that reference to the statute, it's 28-6705. That allows us to spend her funds, which we get from highway user revenue funds, which are gasoline taxes, and a small portion of vehicle registration fees, allows us to take that money and continue to maintain this road. We found out early on about their efforts to change the physical aspects of the roadway. They widened areas, they cut down shrubbery and timber and lined the roadways with the dirt berms and all of this stuff, which really created a tremendous problem for us. And so we did have meetings with them, and we were able to convince them, because we do not have an enforcement authority that we would like to have over roads that cross private property. We convinced them to clean much of this up, not all of it. And so with that, we've been able to maintain the road at a level that we can with the condition that exists across that property. Now, as Roger had mentioned, we did acquire right-of-way for this partnership we had with the forest to help shoot off a rock ledge to allow for trucks to get by for fuel mitigation, fire fuel mitigation efforts. I tried discussing acquisition of right-of-way across their property, and they weren't interested. So Gold Peak Mine, they were not interested in donating any further right-of-way to the county for that portion that goes through their property, the area that you see in red on the map. So, so we've tried to work with the mine. It's been difficult at best, but our purpose and our mission is to maintain these roads so they're passable for you guys, and we're doing our best to continue that through these sections. But again, it's not been easy for us either.
Were you able to find out who is paying the trucking company? Because it's not the Forest Service, I assume, and it's not the county.
So I just want to make sure that I stayed up front that back in the fall, there was a significant amount of road work that was happening up on the Big Bug Mesa area, and the Forest Service did contract a company to improve the roads to access the forest fuels projects up on Big Bug Mesa area. There was a brief period of time where those contractors, and I will be honest with you, I do not know which contractor it was, so I'm not familiar with the name. And
This is out of-
if I had
it's
known,
local.
if I had known that was a question, I would have researched in advance. It was a very brief period of time. Again, it was last fall, and most of that time, those trucks were actually going up Big Buck Mesa Road. There was a brief amount of time they came down Walker, and they were coming through private land, and we asked them to stop that. So I don't know, but I did see early on last fall that there was some confusion about those particular trucks of gravel that were going up, and some of those were contracted by us for road work on Forest Service roads.
Yeah, that's not what's going on now.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
yeah, thank you. I just have two more and then I'll let a couple others speak, but you talked about the sampling that's been required for Gold Paradise Peak. And you have 16 months of data, and they're required to do the sampling.
Yes.
So does anybody monitor that to make sure, I mean, this is China. I mean, is
Yes.
anybody monitoring that to make sure that what they're submitting is actually accurate and honest sampling?
Yes, and it's all bad. It's all exceeding. So they're reporting their data and it
Okay.
is polluted, which is what we expect. And we are taking our own samples as well.
Perfect. And then the last question I'll ask is, and this is from someone else. These aren't necessarily my questions. Surely someone has done an essay on Scandian. Can someone talk about what's the percentage of Scandian in the dirt that they've been pulling out? And is the DHS or FBI aware of any Scandian that they're pulling out?
We are doing water samples, not dirt samples. Anybody doing earth data? Anything in your reclamation projects that does dirt? Don't have any data on the dirt. We
Who's
do
res-
have a contractor that will be doing some sampling at the Senator at it and potentially at Sundance to determine what the composition of the geology is, and so that they can define a potential remediation option to improve water quality, and that will be informed a little bit by the soil, but that's in the next 90 days.
The last question had to do with the fines. I know a lot of people have talked about the fines. So just an example, $6 million to most of us is a lot of money as far as fines, et cetera, et cetera. So if they do get all back into compliance and do all the remediation and start to respect the United States, and they don't pay their fines, will there be an approval then for them to continue to start up operating again?
I don't know the value of the data you have with the $6 million fine
It's
because
online.
that's not from us.
It's on EPA website.
Okay, so we have a $600,000 deferred penalty that is in court as we're enforcing that judgment.
Okay.
And that's all I can say to you. I don't know the future of them paying and what that would do. So if that's on EPA's website, that might be a better conversation for them. I'll give you a business card and you can follow up with me on that, but I'm not aware of the $6 million fines where those are coming from.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here and being so responsive to public concern. My name is Joe Trudeau, and I've been tracking this mine for about 5 years. I live just downstream from it, and we have experienced significant water impairments in the Hassayampa right in front of our house. So it's of great concern to our family. I work in the environmental conservation field, and quite often ADEQ, people generally believe that you don't do enough. So I want to say thank you for what you are doing. I notice it, and I think this is an opportunity for your department to really shine and prove to the public that you have the ability to really clamp down on bad actors. And that's what these guys are. These are bad actors with a record that in at least 6 states of violations similar to what we're seeing here, bankruptcies, fraud, all sorts of illicit activity. All of this information is available. If you're interested, we can share that with you. A lot of folks in town have pieced this puzzle together. They play shell games with their property, and as a testament to that, your initial maps that you showed, you showed the Gold Paradise Peak and the Sino Vantage properties, adding up to about 250 acres. Well, they actually own 415 roughly acres, with a couple other legal entities, corporations. The Leo Wong Trust, which is the members of the Leo Wong Trust are the same members of Precious Metals Consulting and Engineering, LLC, and then also Freshion. And so these four different corporations are comprised of the same people, the same addresses. It adds up to about 415 acres. So I want the public to understand that. And then in addition, they filed 1,000 acres of mining claims on the Prescott National Forest, which those claims are available for viewing at Yavapai County in the recorder's office. I can't speak to the validity of those. I look forward to the BLM doing a validity rights determination. And I would actually encourage the BLM to do this proactively and not in response to the federal nexus being triggered, because these are characters with a track record of defrauding the American citizens in our communities across this country. And I think we have to get ahead of this one. And that's what this gathering tonight is, a major step in us getting ahead of this. But I think we really need to look at the validity of these claims and figure it out. Do we have to worry about this, or is this just another little game they're playing? There's one more thing I want to say. Oh, and just as a point of clarification on your map, Lee, the property that you had shown as the Azurite site was actually not the Azurite site. The Azurite mill facility is on the Leo Wong Trust property and not the Gold Paradise Peak property. So that you, the regulator, and I'm not trying to beat you up here, but that you didn't get that straight really shows it's illustrative of how complex this situation is, and everyone is struggling to understand it. And there's a tremendous amount of bad information going out there. There was a piece in the Daily Courier on Sunday where a gentleman who has a weekly column had the audacity to say with this absolute certainty that there have been no violations of their permits. So I hope that he's here tonight to hear what you had to say. And I hope that he feels a tremendous amount of shame. And I also think the Daily Courier should feel a tremendous amount of shame for publishing that, considering the concern in this community. So thank you for being here. My challenge to you, the next step is work together to figure out how you all can better convey accurate information to the community. Because if our local newspaper is putting out lies, then I don't know who else we have to look to. So I hope you're up for the challenge. Thank you.
I'd like to just make one comment about the claims and the validity of the claims. The claims that come into our office, we will adjudicate them and look at the validity before there is a federal nexus, as he was mentioning. Our goal is to do that before there's an official plan of operations. In fact, in a lot of ways, it's not prudent of them to come in with a plan of operation until they know they have a valid and existing right. And so that kind of puts that would put the cart before the horse if they do so. So we will take a look at those claims, adjudicate, and look for validity before that happens.
Thank you, Leon. Ma'am?
Good evening. Thank you very much for being here. It's very hard to follow Joe, but I will try to do my best. My name is Maria Elena Dunn. I've lived in Arizona for the last nearly 12 years. And one of the things that seems to consternate me is pretty apparent through what I have heard here today, which is there are a lot of people who are involved in, actions, and many of them don't have enforcement power. And it is just very confusing. And one of the things some of my questions were already answered, but there's two that I have. One is, why isn't there further due diligence when these applications are coming through? Because if you say, okay, they presented something and it was approved, but it was approved because it followed the regulations as we have them now. But I mean, if any background work was done on these individuals, we wouldn't be where we are today. That's number one. And the second question I have, probably for the individuals sitting here to my right, why is it that we're just now talking about having a piece of legislation that will cover these issues? You know, Instead of worrying about issues that are non-existent, our legislature should be worried about things that are important and that concern everybody here in Arizona. And so I want to know whether, in fact, the legislation that they are considering will apply to things like water usage, like what we have heard in terms of the farms, the Saudi Arabian farms that grow, I want to make sure that they get the message that we want action from them on issues that are important to everybody, not made up issues. Thank you. So I, in fact, didn't have a question. Thank you. Bye.
Good evening. First, I'd like to say thank you to Mary Mallory for bringing this together. Thank you. Long past due. As I listen to each of these, and no disrespect, 3 and 4 letter agencies speak, okay, what I hear is what everybody else has already said. Your actions are always after the fact. I want to talk right now about the permitting process. And I go along with the young lady who just spoke before me. That's probably going to have to do in great depth with our legislators that are sitting here. So I hope they do get what we're talking about and they act on it. Because as the first gentleman said, he's sick and tired of having defended our country to see our enemies come in and demolish it and take away our precious metals. So let's get back to the permitting process. How in depth is the permitting process? Is there a background check on where the basic money is coming from? Is there a corporation check? What is the background on the owners? And more importantly, when they go through the permitting process, are they responsible to identify with specificity what they are mining for? If not, why not? And are they responsible with specificity to identify where those precious metals will be exported to? If not, why not?
Shall I start with the ADEQ permitting process?
Sure.
We do accept an application for groundwater, drinking water, surface water. They come in, they make their application, they pay their fee. Usually after we've reviewed their process, we are not in the part where maybe the Arizona Corporation Commission would do those backgrounds. We do require them to have a responsible corporate officer, and we usually dovetail to the Arizona Corporation Commission. We do not look at where the material will go. We look at what type of material they do claim, and I'm talking about mostly the individual permits, the stormwater general permits. It will have a sector specific, an activity or something like that. So in the case of Gold Paradise Peak, they do have a permission to discharge polluted stormwater into whatever, wherever, as long as it's a receiving water body, and they have to comply with best management practices. So they identify that they're sector J mining and that they are looking at gold. And in the case of the individual permit, they're disclosing to us what the parameters that they're going to sample for. We know that we also have a total maximum daily load for not attaining in that area. So we require them to do some sampling for that. So they do disclose that they have a mining related type activity, and we do not do a background check on that company. So
Okay, so what
can
I'm hearing,
does somebody else want to answer the question about, do you do any background checks? Okay.
so what I'm hearing is that your permitting process is extremely superficial. You're just basically going to take their word for what's taking place. And then when you get around to doing your sampling, then a question may come up. Might I suggest, and I know it's very, very difficult for different departments to work together. Might I suggest that each one of your departments work with the Corporations Commission, work with your state legislators, and demand better? Because we are not getting what we deserve here in our state, let alone Yavapai County. We are seeing strip mining, we are seeing wastewater issues, we are seeing environmental issues, and from your own report, this has been going on for years now. Yes, you do remediation, but you haven't solved the problem. And the biggest problem, as far as I'm concerned with, and I hope our legislators are listening, is we are sick and tired of seeing our precious metals be shipped out to our enemies.
Thank you.
This is not related to Gold Peak Paradise, but I think it's important to note. Arizona produces 74% of the nation's copper. When we became a state, we had 12 operational smelters. There's only 2 in the United States total today. Do you know what that means? Copper goes out of country to be smelted. That's not up to me. That's not up to anybody on this panel up here. But my point is, China handles 98% of rare earth minerals. China handles 68% of all metals used in electric vehicles and green energy. Regardless whether you do or not, it's being mandated at a different level. I'm trying to make a point that China has a stranglehold on the metals market. That's why they're here. That's why they're in other countries. I agree with you, sir. I agree with you wholeheartedly. This panel right here can't fix that, unfortunately. This is much higher than the state of Arizona. This goes much higher. So the 1872 mining law is a federal law. Doesn't have anything to do with mining on state land. They're on private property. It does on BLM. And that's, again, write your congressman. I want to talk about State Mine Inspector's Office is not a permitting agency. But when we looked at Gold Peak Paradise, Senator Mine, the old abandoned mine, was under one name. The Azurite site's under another name. Gold Peak, the mill site's under another name. I have a staff of 16. I don't have a huge staff to go around and look to see who owns what and see what address, and I apologize, because we should. Joe, to your point, I wish I had the staff to do that, but we don't. And so I had a phone call with Joe. He brought to attention. We started going through all the property in the area, different names. I think there's 5 different names for this company, one address. Again, ADEQ doesn't have the staff to go around and look at all the private land in the state and go, who owns this, who owns that, look at a name and check the address. So I just want to make that clear, because there's a lot that goes to this. I wish we could make this better. I really do, because I want to see it here. I'm a firm believer, we should mine it here. We should take care of it here. We should take care of ourselves first. So thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
I'd like to add to that. As I mentioned earlier, first off, there hasn't been a federal nexus yet, right? And we're talking about who's a native, who's not a native, who served our country. I'm a native. I grew up here. I'm a veteran, Air Force veteran. In fact, I got commissioned as a second lieutenant right up the street at Northern Arizona University. That's where I graduated from, right? My father retired at Luke Air Force Base when I was a kid. My father's a veteran, all right? And so this is not about whether we love our country, whether we're, a veteran or not. Hell, I just told you my story. I've been serving my country my entire adult life. I'm still serving my country, as are other people up here, okay? So let's just sit that to the side for a second. Now, when there is a federal nexus, I will tell you that yes, checks are done on who's mining, all right? When there's a federal nexus and there is a plan of operations, we're making sure that they do have the proper networks, road networks and things of that nature for their haul trucks, all the way down to how the dirt's being carried on the haul truck, all the way down to whether dirt's falling off improperly on the haul truck, whether they are articulated haul trucks or not. And so we take a look at all of that as we're going through our analysis. Now, as far as this parcel up here, it may be a Chinese company, but I'm telling you, someone in this community sold it. It's a private property. It's a private parcel. So who sold that to them? Let's start there. All right. So I can go on and we can debate all day long, but you're not dealing with people up here that don't love their country and aren't serving their country, because we are. And so I'm hoping that the rest of these questions are in the vein of how we can all work together to make sure that this is done properly moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Leon. Sir.
Hi. It's been a long time to stand up here while you all are talking. My name is Ron Harvey. My family's been in Arizona for 113 years. We've seen a lot of mining come and go. And I want to thank you, ADEQ, for being on the case, just being on their backs, making sure they do the right thing. And I know from my family's experience here and from anybody's experience who's lived in the West for a long time, that the mining companies do not care. They don't care about our communities. They don't care about us. They don't care about what happens when they leave that poison hole in the ground. They just leave. They take their minerals, they take their money, they take it overseas, and they just leave without consequence. And maybe it takes 10 years, maybe it takes 20 years, but it's a short amount of time. So in that amount of time, mining companies in Arizona bring in between 10 and $15 billion added to our GDP. That's a lot, that's significant, right? Now, outdoor recreation brings in $8 billion to our GDP. That's a number that's been rising. We're beginning to compete with mining in terms of how we use our land for recreation, for getting outside, for hunting, for fishing, for camping, for exploring, for whitewater rafting, for rock climbing. All of those things contribute. And the more we do those things, the more we push out mining interests. So this is something that we can do at a personal level, at a human level, when we're not serving on a committee. Now, I know you guys have our backs, but there's only so much you can do. And I think I'm speaking for a lot of people in this room who feel like we were blindsided by this. When we sat down here and started listening to this presentation and found out that this has been going on for years, these guys have been here for years, putting pins in the ground, putting little mining claims here and there. And now they say, oh, it's only going to be so big. We've seen that before. We've seen that for over a century. We've seen that for a very long time, since 1872. So we know that mining companies are bad faith actors and always have been. So what I would like to do is make sure that there's a way that we find out before they even start putting pins in the ground that they're coming out there and doing that. And the way we can do that as a community, as a family, is get out and enjoy these woods and pay attention when there are pins and mining claims going in the ground, and talk to each other and use this land. And what I want to know from you guys, can you help us? Can you back us up there? Can you say, hey, let's do one of these community events because there's a company sniffing around from a foreign country that wants to turn a big mountain into a poison hole? Let me know that there's a guy in my backyard wanting to build a house and then wanting to tap into my water, and make a poison area, because if I can't use that river, or if my kids can't use that river in the 50 years long after they've gone and taken their stuff and left, what's my recourse when they say, oops, we made a mess? That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So there's a couple pieces to that. $20 billion to the state economy, 77,000 jobs in the state of Arizona. So if it can't be grown, it must be mined. There's not a thing you're touching right now that hasn't gone through the mineral process. I'm 100%, I already told you that. So let's put this in perspective though. Every piece of green energy has copper in it. Everything you touch, every piece of electronics and everything has to be mined. So we can't get rid of mining. I know that mining's not great. I can tell you right now, since the federal nexus came through, mining is not as dirty and is not, mining companies do care. I can honestly say that. I've been a miner for over 30 years of my life. Freeport-McMoRan is headquarters here in Arizona. Freeport-McMoRan spends billions and billions of dollars with federal government, with state of Arizona to make sure that they have reclamation plans with ADQ to make sure they're meeting the requirements, to make sure their employees are safe. So to say they're all bad is an untrue statement. Turn of the century, 1800s into 1900s, mining companies didn't care. They sure didn't. They were here to try to make a big buck. They stopped finding the ore vein, they left. Mining mineral rights went down, cost of metals went down, they left. That's why we have abandoned mines. That's why we have the problems we have today. New mining, there's so much money put forth beforehand. Freeport-McMoRan has its own water treatment plant. Resolution has its own water treatment plant. Hermosa project in southern Arizona all put up their $2 million plus water treatment plants to make sure any water that comes off their site meets or exceeds drinking water standards. So there's a lot of mining. There's a lot of good in the mining community. They're not very good about sharing what good they do. And they have a long history, a long legacy of not being very good in the turn of the century, 1800s into the mid 1900s. But I encourage you to look at what mining is doing right. They have to have all their permits through the national, if it's on federal land through the EPA, and if it's on state land through the ADEQ. So.
We've got a microphone here for questions, folks.
I'm from Thatcher. Freeport's my backyard. And I want to tell you that we have a permits in process webpage. We have a subscription. It's government delivery to your subscription flavor. If you live here, has mining, my community. All of our permits are public noticed. In fact, we got 22 public comments from the Senator Mine individual permit at discharge. 22. In January of 21 is when we issued that permit. And there are two people, I think, in this audience who talked to me about that. And I appreciate that information. I appreciate the input on it. It was public noticed. And also our general permits, so I spoke about the 6 permits that Gold Paradise Peak has. Senator has an individual permit and it has a stormwater runoff permit. That general stormwater runoff permit is also public noticed. That is in every 5 years. And those are public notice. We're actually getting ready to work on that multi-sector general permit reissuance. So subscribe to our page and be involved in that process, okay? It is called the permits in process. Those are a lot for individual permits, and we are doing some outreach. So we've already reached out to the public to identify what we're going to require in the next permit term. And the goal is that permit will be available January of 25. So again, I'll give you my business card and you can get at least to the right place, azdeq.gov, okay? Permits in process. And again, they are public noticed for water quality discharges.
Next question.
Hi, my name's James Johnson. The question I have is, if you already knew there was a problem with the land, how did they get permits in the first place?
They got permits because We are an environmental agency that needs to minimize pollution. As state mine inspector says, we got to mine it, right? So you got to mine it. We got to make sure that the environment's protected. They were operating without permits, and the next step would be to get them into a permit so that we can manage how they behave on those sites. And when we wrote notices of violation, they would respond, they would deploy BMPs, they would do the next thing. We don't wait as long as somebody mentioned earlier. We have every other year for Senator Addit, and we have as much as we want to go out there, we can. The general permit, we've been out there, I think, 3 times over the last 5 years. So getting back to your point about how could we issue the permit, we issue permits and we manage the pollution. These are all permits to pollute, and we keep them within range. And that's our mission, right? We want to keep things safe for the public, safe for recreation, and we're trying to mitigate that. We're trying to stop that pollution, and that's why we are managing the judgment. And it has stopped to a certain extent. Again, they're not mining out there currently, which we did have some impact by giving those notices of violation. And specifically with the Senator Addit, if we hadn't permitted that, we would not have any data. We wouldn't have that information that was coming off of there. So we have data showing that historic adit, again, this is a historic adit that outlets on Sino Vantage property, and we have that information. With them having plugged that adit, they have essentially stopped the flow from that tunnel. And so we are looking into what are the ramifications of that. So there is a temporary potential temporary reprieve from that pollution reaching the Hassayampa.
So we had to permit them to find out how they're violating our laws and the permits.
We permit them, we want them in permits so we can manage those activities. And then if we didn't have them in those permits, we would have to go the other route, which is enforcement, and we would actually look at penalties and fines. Absolutely, and we are managing those.
Yeah. Next question, sir.
Hello, my name is Stephen Cook, and I'm representing our local Yavapai group at the Sierra Club. I live in Prescott for about the last 10 years. Before I came over here, I talked with our Sierra Club guy, Gary Beverly, who couldn't be here tonight. But he recalled something that happened about 15 to 20 years ago, something like that, where there was a big copper mine planned for a Copper Basin Road here close by Prescott. And he expressed the opinion that given how difficult the 1872 mining law and Clean Water Act and, going the legal route to stop these mining activities is, apparently this particular mine was stopped by public outcry. And that's why it's really encouraging seeing all of you here tonight, because this is a way we can get out ahead of this before it comes down to some of the details, especially the Clean Water Act. Okay, having said that, I want to thank you all at ADEQ for at least in the last couple of years being more responsive to our requests for data and what's going on. I think it was you, Laura, who mentioned some uncertainty about the geology in the area or whatever. It took me like 3 or 4 months to figure out that yes, Gold Paradise Pig did have what's called a type 3.06 permit that is specifically for acid mine drainage to deal with that. And until I found that out, I was ready to file an appeal, with the Attorney General's office and all that. So there's kind of some foot dragging there that occurred with ADEQ in getting that information. But fast forward, I requested the latest monitoring data from you all about a month ago and got a 58-page report of like 3 years worth of, I think what were called DMRs, discharge monitoring reports. And what was most concerning, of the 3 metals you mentioned, cadmium, zinc, and copper being of your concerns, the cadmium was just off the charts in terms of something like a 500 times exceedance of the standard permitted based on what their permit allows. I wasn't that excited about the zinc and the copper. What I was excited about was noticing that there no requirement of that permittee to deal with other particular pollutants of concern, especially chromium and hexavalent chromium. And if you're in an area where there's a lot of sulfide minerals, there's like 5 or 6 different sulfide minerals throughout the area, then if you disturb the ground and expose a lot of surface area and then it rains, those sulfides can easily turn into sulfuric acid, the pH changes, and some of these reactions that may not be a problem at a normal pH, if you're acidic, then you can have problems you didn't anticipate. So my specific question is, why not chromium? Why isn't chromium one of the pollutants that the permittee is required to monitor?
I will need to take that question back. There was an application that identified that they were going to address the drainage from the adit. And so we were going by what the total maximum daily load is in the Hassayampa River. I'm glad you got all the data from the discharge monitoring reports. I know that's a lot of information. And we did, I believe, some recent sampling that was above and beyond those 3 parameters. And we did have sulfide in there. We'll also take that information back and make sure that the technical specialist that's doing additional research on what is the solution for that acid mine drainage is going to make sure and include those parameters, the chromium in there. I don't think it was in their permit, and I'm not sure why. I can take that back to the permits unit and see why they didn't consider that when they wrote the permit based on the application submitted by GPPI.
Thank you.
Donovan Myers. I've been up in Mountain Pine Acres for mile marker 11 and 12 for 47 years. Bought my retirement home first. First, I want to give kudos to ADEQ. They did the storm cloud and done some very, very nice work up there. And then they also did the creek bed last year, so they're definitely proactive. Got a couple questions for Paul, maybe not questions, but maybe just some information. Now, there was a few years back, I'm going to say 3 or 4 years, there was I'm going to guess at a mile marker 13 or 14, there was an open pit gold mining with 15 Chinese, 2 crews of 15 on the, I think it was the, I'm not sure of the name of the mine. I think it was Eagle something. Are you familiar with that one?
So unfortunately, I'm not familiar with that. I was a mine inspector at the time.
Okay.
I will look into it though.
But I heard there was leaching and violations there. They end up packing up and I think sold it to an American outfit. My other question might be more to, is it Leon?
Yes.
Yeah, like I've been up there, like I said, 47 years, not all time, full time, but 47 years off and on. But I'm familiar with the Senator mine. And I think in 1983, Texas outfit tried to mine there. The history is there was, I think, a 200-foot shaft initially, 835 went down. The Texas outfit kind of came in, was going to do the same thing that's happening now. But my question or even to Paul, why are they going up to get the gold when I know that I assume there's an aquifer under there because the Texas outfit did not want to continue mining because they couldn't pump the water out quick enough and then the recovery would just come up. So my question is if are they going to go down and blow all that water out, which would mean lower our aquifer to, I guess, the Goldwater Lakes? And then otherwise, has there been any sampling on the top of the mine to know if there is gold? Because Senator got gold, but there's also a lot of lead and zinc as far as other minerals and metals in there. And the other thing is I'm giving you a bunch of stuff, but the other thing is when they come in fully developed, is there any law, like I say, like this big operation here, like when you're a contractor, you got to post a bond in case some damages like that. Is there anything like that when people mine big time in the state of Arizona?
Yes. So any mine on private land over 5 acres is required to submit a reclamation plan. And that reclamation plan requires them to return it to a safe state, not back to the way it was, but to make sure we don't have 50-foot high walls or hazards to the public that may be out hiking in that area. So that requires them to submit financial assurance. either through an insurance bond, cash. State likes cash. There's multiple different ways, bonds, things like that. So they have to put that bond in before they start mining once they reach that 5-acre threshold. We also require every 5 years that they update that. So with inflation over the last few years, there's a lot of companies, we've sent letters out to all these other companies. Hey, you have to update that. So it's not just a one time and done. Every 5 years they get a letter, they have to update it. They have to notify us annually on how much work they've done and provide updates every year. So, and then that's also looked at during the inspection process. 2 different departments, but the inspectors still look at the reclamation. A lot of sites reclaim as they go.
Then
As
it
far
just-
as the open pit,
the gold on top, the gold on.
so
you
we don't look at that. We don't look at their exploration rules or anything like that. We don't know what they've seen. We don't know what they found. They're just going to submit in their reclamation plan how deep they're going to go, what their plans are to reclaim it when done. So we don't have an answer to that yet.
Okay, and I just want to end on a little bit of positive note. Thank you all for coming. But a lady who mentioned about the roads, I don't care who did the roads, they widened them. It's very good for if we have forest fires to get the emergency trucks up there. So whoever paid for it did it. Thank you very much.
May I ask you a favor? Can I
Yes.
get your contact information? Because we are about to embark on how deep that groundwater is. So if you have any sources that might help us out, that'd be
Okay.
awesome.
Be back. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Kathy Rusing, Prescott City Council. Thank you for being here and answering our questions. I just like to say, this is like a bad dream for me to wake up and see that the Chinese Communist government is buying up land, not only here at our doorstep, but all over the country and also all over the world. And there's nothing we can do about it. It's all legal. And we're a resort retirement community here in Prescott. People come up here to recreate and enjoy our forest. Ecotourism is a very important part of our economy here in Prescott. And we're also the economic driver for Yavapai County. We're the county seat. And the thought of an open pit strip mine 10 miles south of our beautiful town on Senator Highway, which turns into Mount Vernon, our iconic historic neighborhood here in Prescott. It's heartbreaking. And we haven't been kept in the loop. For example, the county has been talking about directing traffic through our city streets so that the trucks can access Highway 89 south to the Port of Long Beach. I would just like to ask the county, is that true? Are we going to have ore trucks coming down Hazley Road from Senator Highway down 89? I'm on my second term here of city council, my second 4-year term. No one's talked to me about this traffic plan with these ore trucks. And believe me, this is just the first phase. They have been buying up all the private land patents, mining patents that they can get. And also they've been leasing thousands of acres from the forest. And there's nothing we can do about that. It is all legal. So I would like someone to address what is going to happen with these ore trucks rumbling through Prescott 24/7, because this is just the first phase. They're going to take down the whole top of that mountain.
Well, what I can tell you is that we don't create traffic plans for these types of operations. And I know that sounds funny to some people, but when we spend public funds, your money, to maintain these roads, we have to have them open in use for the public. And these people, whoever they are the public. If they're having licensed vehicles using roads in lawful manner, they can use these roads. We can't spend public funds on roadways and then restrict their use. Now, cities and towns, they can implement things for oversized loads, for jake brakes, those sort of things. The county isn't in that position. We're rural in that nature. So I know it sounds a little bit odd and a little bit funny, but once we spend a dime of public funds, even across private property, we've been maintaining that road for years. Remember, I told you this has been a thorn in our side too. It's been very, very difficult to keep up with these guys and keep our roads open. But we can, once we spend one public dime on that road, we have to keep it open and accessible for use by the public. And so we're not going to, we don't do some sort of a transportation plan for this sort of thing. Those trucks can, if they're licensed and they're using the road in a lawful manner, if they're not, then obviously law enforcement can get involved. But we can't restrict the use of those roadways. So it's a difficult thing, but unfortunately, if they're a licensed vehicle, you know, and using those roads in a lawful manner, there's nothing that the Public Works Department can do to restrict it. What we can do is try to increase our maintenance and to do things to help make it easier on the general public for the use of those roadways.
Thank you. I have another question for Maury. Is there any idea when this mine gets up and running full blast, what kind of economic benefit? Is this going to be an economic windfall for the county to the detriment of the people that live out in the forest and to the detriment of the city of Prescott?
Thank you for the question, council member. I really am not prepared to answer that. As I think, as you've heard tonight, we have very little input into this whole issue. That's part of the issue I think you're hearing from others. The ability to do what a lot of folks would like to have done does not currently exist. That's an issue we all need to address. But right now, we are limited. We are not, we are not aware of, and there's a microphone for questions, please. Yeah, I'll go ahead and answer the question here as best I can, council member.
I have another question, just since you can't address, future revenues from a
Correct.
gold mine. An example is out at Drake, the cement plant. What, just for as an example, how much revenue does the county earn from just Drake?
I don't have that information. I'd have to look at that too. I mean, if you want to.
Mr. Judge Simmons?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
happy to get those figures for you.
It's a mystery. Okay, sorry. I just wanted to
Yeah,
know.
as the assessor
'cause
said,
it
it's
seems
not
to
a
me
mystery.
you
We
have
just don't have the information in front of us tonight. Did not anticipate that being a question, council member.
Okay, well, it seems to me there's a potential for a conflict of interest. The county might be looking at a windfall, having a strip mine, gold mine out there, generating revenue taxes for them. And it'll be very detrimental to the city of Prescott to have this traffic using our residential city streets. No one's gonna want to come and recreate in the forest when they have a strip mine going. I mean, how many people go to Clifton Morenci to recreate? So I know that you have to, the Chinese, they're exploiting loopholes in these laws. Legally, you have to lease to them. If you didn't, they'd sue. But I would appreciate if we had more two-way conversations. Please keep the city of Prescott in the loop, and hopefully we can work together and put a stop to this, because if they're not abiding by the permits, their permit qualifications, requirements, maybe we can put them out of business and say, I'm sorry, we just need to shut you down. Thank you.
Next question, please.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Macias. Okay, hi, I'm Jennifer Macias. You guys we're talking about resources, and you guys are a very precious resource. You are the team working for us. One of the things that crosses my mind is all this time and energy that everybody here on the stage and everybody back here, is spending on this mine. And my question is there any federal or state funds? Has anybody approached the landowners and said, hey, can we buy this back from you and convert it back into public lands? Don't we have enough money? We have enough money. Why is that possible?
So we're both, at least this side, and I can probably say the same for the federal side. We're governed by rules.
Yeah.
And that is not in our jurisdiction. It's not in the purview of our rules. Now, I don't know, you can ask the legislatures if that's something that maybe can be looked at. I don't have that answer. I don't think anybody on this stage has that answer to answer that officially.
So state legislators would have that answer? Who would have that answer? Yeah. Is there funding for that kind of thing?
ADEQ has a water quality fee fund and not allowable use to do the remediation. We have the WARF fund, Water Quality Assurance Revolving Fund, and that has specific requirements. Is that where you get your money for remediation? Water Quality Fee Fund for abandoned mines. When we have a responsible party, we have to go through the court system. So that's why we're in the court system trying to get that money back. The $600,000 penalty that I mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
that goes into the general fund for other uses within the state.
And I guess I'll just speak from the federal side that there is a process for federal land managers to purchase or acquire private inholdings. One of the things that we would need to look to would be what the benefit was to the National Forest System and to the public. And oftentimes we wouldn't want to take on a piece of private property that has a significant amount of environmental concerns on it. I'm not making a judgment call as to whether or not that would be the case on the private lands we're talking about right now. I'm just stating there are some general parameters that the federal government would look into when we are using federal funds to acquire additional public lands. We have to be very thoughtful about that. So there is a process from the federal side. So there are a couple different jurisdictions and authorities you were asking about. And so just to answer that question, there is a mechanism where the federal government can acquire private inholdings.
It would alleviate a lot of problems. Okay, thank you.
Sir, before you begin, folks, it's 7:18. We have to wrap up by 7:30, and I know we need to reserve a few minutes here for some wrap up. So if I could ask you to be very, very brief, appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone for being here. This is a wonderful example of civic dialogue, which is what makes our country really strong. Some observations. I heard the state mining inspector say, I need more staff. I heard, I don't remember your name, Natalie, right? Natalie, say that great work is being done by Natalie and that it's a lot of volunteer work. I heard Lee say that we need to have the company do the sampling and testing. I saw a bunch of people come up kind of wanting like demands for sampling, testing, possibly enforcement. And I'm going, do you have enough resources to do this? And this is just Prescott, you cover the whole state. So my question is, what would your wish list be from the state legislature so that you can be strong and robust to protect our community from what could happen up here with Gold Peak and the Chinese?
Thank you.
Great question. I wish I knew. We have been adding inspectors annually. We're at 8 right now, and that is just to do our basic business. We have about 450 inspections we do on an annual basis, and those inspections often result in trips all over the state, and about 10% of those turn into enforcement, where we're looking at having them do something to come back into compliance. We call that return to compliance. When they're not doing something, we have an enforcement process. We have a handbook that prescribes what our next steps would be. And we're always looking at impact to the environment. So impact to the environment, we respond within a certain time, and we keep escalating and keep escalating and keep escalating. We're at the process right now with GPPI. We're with the Attorney General's office. We're in court.
Yeah. What is the annual WARF You said that WARF was this way to restore water quality.
WARF?
I've heard
And-
15 million per year.
Very
Is
quickly,
that
please.
enough?
Yeah, I don't have the details on WARF other than it's available. We do voluntary remediation projects where GPPI could walk in the front door and say, I want to be in your program. Give us some money and help us remediate it. They haven't done that. The abandoned mine program she mentioned was water quality fee fund, and that has some restrictions on its use as well. But as far as a dollar amount, one of the things we had initially estimated based on some preliminary data about what it would cost to remediate that adit was between $3 and $6 million. And so if they depart, then we would be looking at funding sources. Where are we going to get the money? WARF is going to be down maybe next year, who knows? So water quality fee fund, also, we don't have those data yet, right? The budget's not out yet. So I don't have an answer for you on that.
Okay, thank you. Next
Thank
question,
you.
please.
Actually, Maury, do you mind?
Very quick.
I just want to make sure I go back to that last question about the federal government's ability to acquire property. I realize I left it open-ended, and I heard the woman that asked the question say that would be a great solution. I just want to remind folks that the Forest Service, as the federal land management agency, only has jurisdiction over the surface. It's the mineral rights that are the biggest concern. So even if the federal government owned what is now private property, it's the mining rights for that subsurface that is the challenge here. Thank you for letting me
You
clarify.
bet. Sir?
Thank you. My name is John Barber. I've been in Prescott for 20 years, so I'm a newbie here. I'm a mining engineer, licensed professional engineer in the state of Arizona. I do not have, relax, I don't have any relationship with Gold Paradise Peak. When I first became aware of this project last fall, I looked at their website. The information they presented on their website was, to use a technical term, sketchy as hell. It did not inspire confidence. When I tried to contact them, they never responded by email, by contact, by phone numbers, the same experience y'all have had. I know we're pushed for time, so briefly, I'm going to say that I'm not opposed to mining. Mining is important. Regardless of what the other gentleman said, permitting issues, I've worked on two of the major projects that Mr. Marsh spoke about, and it ain't easy, part. It takes a long time and a lot of money to get a good permit. But this mob, this Gold Paradise Peak, not a chance. No
Thank
way.
you, sir.
And Lee, one thing, you mentioned that they've just plugged the attic. That raises a really big red flag. If that plug suddenly came loose, you could have a real mess on your hands. We don't know what they did, or I don't, but you need to be careful with it.
Thank you.
Yeah, next question.
First off, I would like to say thank you, Mayor Mallory, for having this come together. Another shout I would like to give to is Selena Bliss. Ma'am, thank you. I'm from Cedar Heights, so you're going to put this together, but you were the ones that you started it. You got it going. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So I'm from Cedar Heights. I know only one of you up there. Paul, how you doing again? So thank you all for being here, but I'm going to turn my back on you, but not in disrespect. I want to talk to the people, okay? So this isn't in disrespect. Ladies and gentlemen, what I would like to tell you is you got to remember one thing. All the things that we're hearing and talking about today, you have representatives in this room. You have people behind me that are on our payroll, okay? If you want to, we need to, not just in this forum, but in other forums, let them know how you feel. It's we the people. I've heard Ms. Bliss say this so many times. It's we the people. We have to come together. We can come to these forums and we can tell them, but as United States citizens, these ladies and gentlemen work for us, and we need to remind ourselves of that. So please take that for what it's worth. Get together, come together, and we need to come together and we need to fight this wrong, whether we say Chinese or whatever. We all know it's wrong. We need to come together and fight all together. Thank you very
sir.
much.
One last question.
My name's Steve Bartok. I'm a resident here in Prescott. And this isn't a question. I apologize to everybody. It's just a statement. What I've heard tonight is incredible. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank all of you for being here tonight because it's important to this town, to this county, and this country. I was in business for 20 years, and I got put out of business by the Chinese. And for 10 years, me, my partner, and 3 other competitors fought against the system that governs against us people. And the only way this thing's going to get solved is by all of you, thousands of you, jumping up and down on these legislators' desks and demanding that it gets corrected, going all the way to the governor and all the way to the Washington, D.C. Because when the 5 of us went against it, the Federal Trade Commission shut us down against the damn Chinese. They won. They copyrighted, they took our copyrights. Yeah, they stole all of our software, and they reproduced the stuff and sold it on the open market to us people for 10 cents on the dollar.
Sir,
And so,
you wrap it up. Sorry,
okay.
we're out of time.
So anyway, if you want to resolve this situation, all of you need to get on these legislators, the governor, and the rest of the federal government to fix this problem.
Okay, thank you,
you.
sir. One last question.
I'm disabled, so I wasn't able to wait in line. My family owns the 10 acres on the very top of Mount Tridal and has been in Arizona for 122 years. And I have some major concerns about the topography, the landscape up there, the drainage, the runoff, the safety, trees being removed, and then what happens to the massive amount of snow and moisture that accumulates up there. It is a major concern for the runoff of the surrounding land. All of the entire ecosystem could really be destroyed. My grandpa actually built the cabins that they live in up there, and he built several of the cabins out on Mount Tridal. I grew up riding dirt bikes up there. I have the scars, from wrecking on the Hacienda. And it is a major concern. It is rugged, steep, steep, steep country. If you think Prescott is rugged, you have not seen anything unless you have seen this area of Mount Tridal. And it is a real concern. The other thing is my family has been told not to remove not to clear the land at different times because of the owls. So why is this company allowed to completely destroy this entire ecosystem? I don't understand how that is possible. There's your loophole. There is your loophole. The owls.
Thank you.
So I wrote a book. I'm a writer. I wrote a book called Arizona Rain. This is serious business. My family has touched this entire state, and it is an incredible concern. The animals, the water. My family has wells up there with the best tasting water you have ever had in your life. Do you think that it's going to stay that way with this destruction, this mass destruction? No. And so we have to do everything we can to find those loopholes. The owls.
Thank
So
you.
where's the answer though to that
Thank
question?
you.
So I'll
So-
just speak really quickly.
quick.
So the regulating agency over federally protected species such as the Mexican spotted owl is the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and they are involved. We've been in contact with them, and I can't speak for them tonight, but I just wanted to make it clear that the Forest Service does not have the regulatory authority over Mexican spotted owls. We manage the habitat on National Forest System land.
Thank you, Sarah. And folks, I'll get you. We are out of time, but we have our full legislative delegation here, and I see we have 2.
Right.
Here at the mic. And
Thank you.
If I could,
I'll be
Representative,
extremely brief.
and if I could ask you to do one thing in your response, we heard the mine inspector reference the piece of pending legislation. If you would touch on that, please.
My seatmate's actually going to
Very
talk
good.
about it.
Thank you.
So I want to talk about the country of China for a second. I don't look at it as a nation. I look at it as a communist enemy of the United States. Until you understand that it is our enemy. So let me tell you something about in 2021, I introduced a bill that would teach the evils of communism for our kids in high school, because one day our kids gonna be just old like us. They need to understand the knowledge of our enemy of communists. Unfortunately, I will tell you that the bill did pass, got signed into law by Governor Doug Ducey. Everyone on the other side of the aisle voted against it. So I'm going to repeat it one more time. This year, 2024, Speaker Ben Toma and myself introduced another bill to expose the evils of communism, mainly China. The governor vetoed it a couple of days ago. All right, so I'm going to go one more step. On Wednesday, I'm going to be introducing a bill that would require the state government to vet our investment, our supply chain, to see where they're coming from. And if they come from China, communist China, the state of Arizona should not be doing any business with them, period. So it's not it's not us that you have to worry about. It's everyone on the other side of the aisle. And I can tell you right now, that bill is going to pass the House. It's going to go to the Senate. It's going to pass the Senate. And I think the governor will veto it. So I'm going to leave the mining area up to my seatmate. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Best seatmates ever. I just want to say I've learned a lot about mines growing up here in the 70s. As kids, like the previous speaker, we started hiking with headlamps. There were so many open shafts. You could go all the way in the dark. It was cool, but not so cool now that I understand the damage being done as adult. I've learned a lot about mines. The three of us co-sponsored a bill when we found a loophole. Thank you to the Chino Valley Cedar Heights people. The folks that lived out there called us on Labor Day and said, folks, we got a problem, get down here. We were there by that afternoon. That bill is still waiting for its final vote on the Senate side. Now that one is getting bipartisan support. So I'm feeling optimistic. However, folks, we got a problem. We're late. This Senate Bill 1403, this directly addresses the issue of the loophole we're seeing. Now, this is not going to help the past, but it will help the future. And that's what I can be optimistic about, is looking for the future. So there's a reason we're Legislative District 1. We were the first territorial capital. We are the leaders. Wherever Prescott sits will always be LD1. This gathering tonight is going to cause a lot of momentum when that bill, this bill, 1403, gets on the governor's desk. It's currently partisan. I don't know why. We need to convince the Democratic Party that this is important. And now I think as a result of tonight, we have the evidence. I'm feeling a lot better about this particular piece of legislation, but I'm also realizing we have a lot of work to do.
Just some details on this. Just some details on this 1403. It passed. It started out in the Senate, as was said, it was Senator Schamp's bill. It passed through the committee with bipartisan support, 6-1, 4 Republicans and 2 Democrats voting for it. 1 Democrat voted against it. But when it got to the floor of the Senate, for some reason, the Democrat caucus took a caucus position against the bill, and it didn't get 1 Democrat vote on the floor of the Senate. Now, it's gone over to the House. In the House committee that it went through, it got Democrat support in the committee, but for some reason, when it gets to the final vote in either the House or the Senate, it's called third read. If it goes just on party lines, if only Republicans are supporting the bill, as happened in the Senate, and all the Democrats are voting against the bill, as happened in the Senate, you are guaranteed that Governor Hubbs is going to veto it. So if you have friends or family around the state of all parties, independent, Democrat, but especially Democrat right now, in order to get something signed by the governor, it has to have Democrat votes on that final third read vote. And we're getting right to that point. It just cleared cow yesterday in the Senate, I think. Going to be up next Wednesday. Democrat representatives, now all of the 3 from this district are Republican, but if you have friends and family around the state, you need to encourage them, especially Democrats, to help support this bill, because I'm sure everyone in this audience, especially who spoke, are not all Republicans. In fact, I know Mr. Ruby was up here, and he's running the campaigns for the Democrats. So we got to get Democrats to vote for some of these bills, and that's exactly what 1403 does, is it says foreign enemies of our country, and I think it names them China, North Korea, Russia, and Iran cannot own property in Arizona.
Thank you all for those comments. Finally, we again are a few minutes over here, so I'm going to turn it back over to Supervisor Mallory to wrap us up.
I want to really thank all of you so much. This was streamlined and it was recorded. We can go back and we can review this, but I need all of you to know that this group of people, we have met with them for about a month on phone conferences, and they welcomed to come up here and do this for us. So please know they are working very hard. It is hard to get through a lot of things, but they know that we care and they came up here to go through this and be here. So I need to applaud them and appreciate them. And last but not least, Cynthia Gentle is my executive assistant. She's been working tirelessly and she's talked with many of you. And so God bless her and I appreciate all of her work. Thank you, everyone. God bless you and let us stay active. Thank you.
Well, thank you guys all for tuning in. Obviously, this is going to be staying on our page, so you guys can go ahead and play it, reverse it. Sorry for there's no closed captions. We'll try to sum it up and then put it into a press release and then send it out by tomorrow in regards to what was said. But as you heard, the only way that we could go ahead and stop these types of things is we all come together as one. So thank you guys. Have a good night, and we'll see you guys later.